In today's Business Matters, the Justice Department proposed that Google sell its AdX digital ad marketplace and DoubleClick for a publisher's platform for managing and delivering ads on websites. That's after a federal judge found the company illegally dominated online ad tech markets. The ruling was another blow for Google after a separate judge found last year that Google held an illegal monopoly in online search. Google said forcing it to sell its ad business go beyond the court's findings and have no basis in law and would harm publishers and advertisers as well. Rite Aid has once again filed for bankruptcy. Yesterday's filing comes just 7 months after Rite Aid exited Chapter 11 and emerged as a private company. The drugstore chain says it's looking for a buyer and refiling for bankruptcy protection, and it's going to help facilitate that process. The company says it has secured nearly $2 billion in new financing to keep it operational during its bankruptcy. The company also says it will keep its stores open throughout the bankruptcy process. Rite Aid first filed for Chapter 11 protection in late 2023. That's before emerging from bankruptcy in September of last year. And it has more than 1,200 stores remaining, which is roughly half the number it had just 2 years ago. Now, Ford says it does not expect its car prices to significantly rise in the United States due to recent auto tariffs. Company officials say they expect U.S. car prices to increase 1 or 1.5% in the second half of the year. The automaker also announced yesterday the new tariffs will cost the company $1.5 billion this year. Ford is currently selling off its inventory of imported vehicles that arrived before tariffs took effect last month. Its earnings report showed it had a sharp decrease in profits for the first 3 months of the year. They've extended their employee pricing offer for everyone through the 4th of July. And the head of Dairy Queen is staying cool and not melting over tariffs. Now, the chain, which is owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, reported sales and transactions grew in the first quarter before flattening last month. Troy Batter warned tariffs could dampen demand and slowing sales could put pressure on franchisees, which could see increases from tariffs. But Batter says the Blizzard maker shouldn't overreact since the scope of the tariffs keep changing. He also noted that he considers the company's largest market, which is the U.S., to be, quote, quite manageable, explaining that most of its products and ingredients are grown, produced, and distributed in the U.S. Meanwhile, an import swell ahead of sweeping tariffs. The U.S. trade deficit has reached a record high as companies try to stock up during a tariff pause. Here's more.
Now's the time to ship it. Consumers and companies are taking full advantage of a brief pause on President Trump's sweeping reciprocal tariffs. Based on data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, imports to the U.S. have surged more than 20% this year. In March, imports of consumer goods reached an all-time high. A major part of the increase was pharmaceutical imports. As a result, the U.S. trade deficit in goods and services grew by nearly 93% to a record $140 billion. Last month, imports jumped by nearly $18 billion. Compare that to exports from the U.S., which increased by a fraction, about $500 million. But all this importing has been a drag on the gross domestic product, which slid into negative territory for the first time in 3 years. U.S. GDP shrank about 0.3% in the first quarter. It was pulled down mostly by net exports, the difference between total exports and total imports. Many economists expect imports to ease in the second quarter, which would take some pressure off the GDP.
Credit Suisse Services is paying up for conspiring to hide more than $4 billion from the IRS in hundreds of offshore accounts. This was detailed in a release from the Justice Department, who says bankers falsified records and processed fictitious donation paperwork. In addition to the new crimes, this also breached a 2014 plea agreement, and that's when Credit Suisse became the largest bank in 2 decades to plead guilty to a U.S. criminal charge. This was again for helping Americans evade taxes in a conspiracy that spanned decades. In its latest sentencing, Credit Suisse will have to pay a fine of more than $500 million. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is fully on board and staunchly defending President Trump's trade agenda. The cabinet secretary told a room full of global investors that tariffs are a tool to make the U.S. more appealing to investors like them. This was at the annual Milken Institute Global Conference. Bessent said tariffs are one of the core components of the president's economic agenda, along with tax cuts and deregulation. He explained that tariffs are engineered to encourage companies like theirs to directly invest in the U.S. and to hire and to build here. The Federal Trade Commission has a new rule aimed at ending so-called junk fees on live event tickets and short-term lodging. The FTC says the rule will further President Trump's recent executive order on combating unfair practices in the live entertainment market. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
The Federal Trade Commission is targeting so-called junk fees, hidden and deceptive fees on sales of live event tickets, rideshare services, and short-term lodging. Effective May 12th, the FTC is looking to ban bait-and-switch pricing and tactics used to hide total prices. Although this isn't the first time this has come up. On March 31st, President Trump signed an executive order on combating unfair practices in the live entertainment market. It's meant to ensure price transparency at all stages of the live event ticket purchase process, including the secondary ticketing market, where price gouging frequently occurs. Musician Kid Rock was even present at the signing in the Oval Office. Trump said, "I've spoken to him over the years about it, and it bothers him," referring to astronomically inflated prices for some concert tickets. It bothers a lot of other artists. They go out with a $100 ticket and it sells for $2,000 the following night. The FTC's final rule doesn't mandate any specific type or amount of fee or pricing strategies. Instead, it just requires businesses that advertise prices to tell consumers the whole truth up front about total prices and fees. For small business questions, you can check the compliance guide on the FTC's website at ftc.gov. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
So it's illegal, but some Chinese exporters are exploiting a workaround to evade the new U.S. tariffs. And here's how it works. An exporter offers to send goods to a U.S. company with delivery duties paid and covers the cost of tariffs. The supplier would then deliberately undervalue the goods or change descriptions to reduce duties owed. This was detailed in offers from Chinese suppliers that were reviewed by the Financial Times. The U.S. actually allows foreign companies to register as importers, which would make them legally responsible for duties. A 2008 report showed the Justice Department rarely pursues these kind of fraud cases. China's 6 largest banks have posted first-quarter reports with a significant drop in both earnings and profits. Experts said the profit drop in China's banking industry indicates a stalling economy that is likely to continue to worsen. The 6 Chinese major banks are all state-owned. The first quarter data show a total net profit drop of $1 billion compared with the same period in 2024. A decrease of around 2%. They also reported a total revenue of $125 billion in the first quarter, a year-over-year decrease of $1.9 billion. Taiwanese economist Edward Huang said the tariff war will have a greater impact on Chinese banks' profits in the second quarter. He said that bank profits and stocks indicate whether a country's economy is good or bad because banks transfer funds to all sectors in a country. And your next Barbie doll could end up costing you more money, potentially. The CEO of Mattel, the maker of Barbie, told the Wall Street Journal the company plans to raise prices on American toys due to tariffs. The vast majority of toys sold in the U.S. are in fact manufactured in China. The company's chief financial officer says the tariffs will cost Mattel roughly $270 million this year. The CEO is calling for zero tariffs on toys and games around the world. Mattel says it plans to diversify its supply chain outside of China, including relocating the production of 500 toys to other countries. San Francisco-based DoorDash says it has an agreement to buy British food delivery service Deliveroo. The nearly $4 billion deal will give DoorDash a larger presence in Europe and the Middle East. Deliveroo serves customers in 9 countries. The deal filing says both companies will be able to invest more in product and technology along with delivering stronger Deliveroo service. The sale is still subject to a shareholder vote and regulatory approval. DoorDash also said it agreed to acquire New York-based software firm 7 Rooms. The company said both acquisitions will increase its ability to grow its services. And OpenAI has dialed back its plan to turn into a for-profit company, announcing its nonprofit parent will stay in control. That's according to its CEO, Sam Altman. Here's the story.
It's the latest after years of legal challenges and boardroom drama for the AI maker of ChatGPT that at one point 2 years ago saw members of the nonprofit board ousting Altman over a breakdown in trust. In a blog post, Altman said OpenAI will remain a non-profit that would still control its for-profit arm. Back in December, Altman first proposed a set of restructuring plans that turns OpenAI's for-profit arm into a public benefit corporation, a structure that gives shareholders returns while the firm still focuses on social goals. But those plans would see the non-profit parent ceding control. OpenAI said Monday that instead the non-profit part will keep a grip on the company while it pushes ahead with restructuring its for-profit arm to help raise more capital. Monday's announcement is a major win for OpenAI's critics. The firm's earlier plans to move to an outright for-profit drew backlash on whether it had strayed too far from its original aim to develop AI for the public good. Meanwhile, despite Monday's announcement, Elon Musk, a co-founder of OpenAI, says he'll proceed with his lawsuit against Altman and his firm. The suit seeks to block OpenAI's transition to a for-profit business. Musk earlier this year made an unsolicited $97 billion bid for OpenAI that was rejected by Altman. OpenAI in March said it would raise up to $40 billion in a new funding round by SoftBank, which valued the startup at $300 billion. After Monday's move, Altman said OpenAI would still be able to receive funding from the Japanese tech investor.
Time is running out if you still haven't secured your real ID, and the scramble is on to get one. Tomorrow is the deadline for Americans to obtain the particular form of identification. If you don't have a real ID or another accepted form of identification, like a passport, you can face delays at airport security. The Real ID Act was passed by Congress in 2005. It enacted the 9/11 Commission's recommendation that the federal government enhance security standards for identification. Here's a TSA official addressing media.
We are going to process you. It might take some additional time, but we're going to do it efficiently. We are fully staffed at all locations across the country, so I don't anticipate any wait times or delays as far as you're going through the security process, but we will process you, will not be turned away.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem also said during a hearing today that air travelers who do not have real ID may face enhanced security procedures, but will not be denied access to flights. Noem said earlier this week that 19 states issue driver licenses to immigrants who are not in the United States legally, and enforcing real ID will deny those individuals the ability to travel by air. People will also need real IDs to visit federal buildings starting Wednesday. And Mother's Day is coming this Sunday, and industry analysts say the average person marking the day plans to spend more than $250 this year on gifts. Here's more.
Happy Mother's Day!
When it comes to celebrating mom, consumers are shelling out.
Consumers spend, on average, for Mother's Day more than any other holiday except the winter holidays.
Catherine Cullen with the National Retail Federation says Mother's Day spending is expected to top $34 billion this year, with people celebrating spending an average of $259. That's around $5 more per person than last year.
They want to celebrate the moms and other mother figures in their lives.
According to the NRF's recent survey, the most popular gifts this year for mom: flowers, greeting cards, outings like brunch or dinner, clothing, and jewelry.
There are lots of ways consumers can save, and also ways that they can create a meaningful memory with mom through a gift of experience.
Other options that can help keep down the cost: a picnic, movie night at home, or a homemade craft.
The key is spending time together and something that's a little different for her.
Colin also says some retailers are rolling out sales ahead of Mother's Day to help shoppers save.
Onto markets, U.S. stocks declined for a second day amid uncertainty over trade deals. Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, but no progress was made. Markets remain cautious, particularly about China's role in negotiations. And tariff-driven market volatility continues, with many companies withdrawing guidance and the Fed signaling patience on rate moves. And markets expect a rate cut in July. And that's it on today's Business Matters.